All right, everyone, we're back. Welcome. Happy LSW20 once again. This is our 2 o'clock session about how to 10x your digital networking. I am so excited to have Phil Pelto here. If you were listening in on our last session, Robert was certainly your I don't know what, it's like a pre-circus act almost, like a warm-up show for, for your presentation. I mean, Phil has just some incredible experience in sales, and he is the founder of My Firestorm, which I know he's going to talk about today. And I love what Phil teaches. I love what he's up to in the world. So I'm going to get out of his hair, and I'm just going to turn it over to you, Phil. Thank you for being here, and welcome to LSW20.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me, Morgan. All right, so let's get rolling. It's a little. We're all learning in this this new age here, and it's so fun to have a presentation where I don't get to see anybody. It's odd. Anyway, all right. So we're going to talk about 10xing your digital networking, and when you think about that, or when you hear that, you might have a couple different places that your head goes. Maybe it's, you want to 10x the size of your network, which is one option. And the way that I really think about it is 10xing the efficacy of your network and 10xing your efficiency and your results, and which doesn't require 10xing the size of your network. So I think some people will be happy to hear that. But I always like to start out my presentations with Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is one of my early childhood, heroes / mentors, whatever. And I, kind of latched onto him early on. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Bruce Lee, he is the creator of a form of martial arts called Jeet Kune Do. And the way that he came up with Jeet Kune Do is he actually took and studied everything. He studied all the different martial arts that he could get his hands on, and he took little bits and pieces from each different martial art that he liked and said, okay, I really like this from, Kung Fu. I really like this from karate. I don't like this so much, and I'm going to leave it. And then he put it together into something that worked for him and was a style all of his own. And I like that analogy as it pertains to business and networking and sales and really anything in life, marriage and, being a family person or whatever. There's not one end all be all resource for anything. And there's a lot of good little nuggets that you can take from everywhere and put something together that works for you. And the reason I bring that up in the beginning of this presentation, and really any presentation that I do, is because I'm not the end all be all resource on sales and networking. I'll say things sometimes and people are like, oh, I really like that, I'm going to take that. Or and then I'll say something else and people are like, oh, that's a bunch of crap. And so I don't want people to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and just because there's one thing that you don't like doesn't mean you can't take the things that you do like and use them for yourself. So that's one major thing that I like to start out with. And the other is you're going to hear a lot of things that maybe you've already heard before, because a lot of this stuff isn't that complicated. There's nothing secret and magic about it. It's really just back to the basics and learning how to do the simple things that everybody knows they should be doing, and just getting really good at implementing them and doing them well. So I love this quote. It's not a Bruce Lee quote, so I know it can seem that way, but anyway, so to know and not to do is not to know at all. And so when you hear something and you're like, oh, that's old news, I've heard that before, ask yourself, okay, are you implementing it? Are you applying that knowledge? Because you can make a really strong argument that if you're not applying the knowledge, then do you really know it? So anyway, you'll hear some things that you've probably heard before, and that's okay. All right, jumping into this presentation here, we've got a kind of an overview. I wanted to give you a heads up on what we're going to cover. So the first piece is kind of the strategic planning piece, like how do you approach your networking? And I think that's a really important chunk of what we're going to talk about. The second thing is, how do you connect with those people? How do you reach out? And especially nowadays in a digital world, there's not as many, well, there's not any in-person events going on really. So how do you reach out to these folks? Do you connect with them online, in LinkedIn or Facebook or, Meetup? How does that look? So we'll talk about that. how do you nurture relationships? You know, in the old days, you could actually go out, have coffee meetings with people, have lunch, you know, go out and do activities with them. Not so much of that going on now. So how do you nurture those relationships? How do you keep it flowing and building on that relationship in this, you know, new digital world? So, and then the last thing is tracking and measuring and making sure that you're keeping notes on everything. And we'll talk about some tips and tricks for how to make all that efficient and effective. So the first step in this whole process here is planning it out, having a great strategic plan and understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you building a network? What's the end game? How are you going to, you know, use this to grow your business? So the first thing that I, you know, ask myself, and this is a Simon Sinek thing, you know, start with why. Why are you building a network? Why do you think that that's a valuable thing? And by the way, if you guys have any questions in the middle of this presentation, there's Q&A at the end, but feel free to, you know, pop in with a question. I think Morgan is manning that kind of stuff right now. So, but why do you want to network? Why do you want to invest? Because it takes time, you know, it takes time, it takes energy, it takes, you know, effort to make it happen. And sometimes it can be, you know, a tedious process and you're not always sure what the end game is or what the results are going to be from it. So, you know, why do you want to invest the time? All right. The first thing that I think about when I think about building a network and specifically building a digital network now is multiplying myself. You know, I'll talk a little bit more in the presentation about how we really only have a limited amount of time. It's not a lot of time to do things like this. So if you're thinking of, you know, say you're starting a business or you're in a business or you're in sales or something like that, I have the way for me to grow my business is to work on my business, go out, meet with people, you know, do Zoom calls, do, you know, telemarketing calls, to reach out, you know, cold emails, put together marketing things. You know, there's a finite amount of time. I can work as hard as I possibly can, and a lot of you on the call right now are probably used to putting in those long hours and just grinding it out and going to bed late and getting up early and, you know, really, you know, hustling. And there's a limit to that. You know, you can only do so much. So when you think about building a network, you can multiply yourself. You know, I want to educate other people that are interested in my success, that care about me and my business, that are dealing with the same types of customers and clients that I want to deal with. I want to educate them on what I'm doing. And if they care about me, I care about them. They can be out there talking to their clients. And if some opportunity pops up, that's a in for me. And if I have done it properly, that'll happen in a, you know, repeatable way. So multiplying myself is one of the big things that I think about. The second thing is a support system, making sure that I feel supported in my business, that I can reach out to other people, especially nowadays when everything is online and we're staying at home and there's, you know, as if business owners and, you know, founders and salespeople don't get in their own head enough and have a million, you know, negative thoughts a day about, you know, what they're doing or not doing or doing wrong and all that sort of stuff. It's nice to have somebody to reach out to and, you know, talk to. And if it's just bouncing ideas off of them, or if it's, hey, I've gone through that as well, or, hey, you know, I don't have any good answers for you, but, you know, let's sit down and have a beer over Zoom and you can just, you know, complain about your day. You know, having some support system in place there is super, super, super important. And people that actually care about you, care about your well-being. And so that could come in the form of friends, family, you know, other partners that are in your industry, people that are in maybe in the same stage of business, but in a different industry, whatever. So there's a lot of different forms that can take, but just having a support system is super, super, super important. The third thing is positioning yourself as a resource for your friends, your family, your clients, your prospects. I always like to say, if you know who to call them. If you don't know who to call me and I'll figure it out, because I've kind of positioned myself in all of the relationships that I have as a resource for everybody to lean on. And I am happy to deliver on that. I love providing value to other people, and I love being that connector, that kind of hub for, whatever they need. So, if somebody needs a plumber, they can call me, and I'll have a couple of names of people that I can give them. Or if somebody needs a digital marketing specialist, or if somebody needs a commercial insurance agent, or if somebody needs, a banker, I've got relationships in all of those industries where if somebody calls me, I can say, okay, based on, your location, based on your size of business, based on your personality, all these other factors, I can give you a couple of recommendations that'll be a good fit for you, and feel really good and confident about those introductions that I'm going to make. And that raises the value, raises the status of me in the eyes of the person that I'm providing those introductions to, on both ends, the person that's, receiving the introduction, for the business, and the person that's receiving the introduction for the service that they're needing. So I think that is a huge, huge benefit that people, should consider when they're planning out their network. And then the last thing, it kind of ties into the third point, is just adding value to your clients. A lot of times people aren't going to ask you for, who do you know that can provide XYZ service? But if I have a good relationship with my partners and with my clients and my prospects and the folks that I'm doing business with, my personality, and I try to train other people how to do this, but I'm constantly on the lookout and actively listening for ways that I can make introductions. If somebody says something and they say, oh man, I'm really having a tough day, I don't have time to meet with you today because my server went down, IT complete mess, I don't have time to talk about relationship building today, sorry Phil. I'm going to be like, hey man, I totally get it, definitely need to take care of that stuff first, but would you like an introduction to somebody that can handle that for you? Because clearly there's some issues if your server goes down. So actively listening, being able to provide value to your client, but then again, able to provide value to somebody else in your network that offers that service that you're going to offer to provide in connecting those people. So that's kind of what I think about in planning it out, why you want to do it. Now, the second thing is, after you figured out why you want to build out your network, and by the way, some of those things will apply to you, some of them may not, and that's okay. So really just spend some time thinking about, what's the goal here. The second thing is networking philosophy. What approach are we going to take when we build our network? And there's a couple of different camps here, and I'll tell you which camp I'm in, but I'm not saying that is the right choice for you. It could be a different choice for you. So there's the camp that's cast a wide net. Let's just go out and meet as many people as we can, and you never know who that person might know. You never know where that person might end up in life. You never know if they're going to be a client or a prospect or a connector or whatever. So there's that camp that's, hey, let's cast a wide net and let's try and just get as many people as we can into the network. And you see those folks on LinkedIn all the time. They're the lions, the LinkedIn open connection or open networkers, and they have like 8 million connections or whatever. So that's one way to do it, and I'm not saying that that's wrong, but the second way that I like to approach things, and this is my personal preference, is to be laser focused. I'm super strategic about who I want to connect with, what the end game is, how I'm trying to build that and cultivate that relationship and that network, and what does it look like, and what's it going to do for me. And the reason that I'm so particular about it is because, like I said before, we don't have that much time. Time is such a valuable asset for anybody. And the sooner you figure out that, and the sooner that you put a high value on your time, the sooner you're going to be successful and on your way to success. So you can't just spin your wheels. So I want to be laser focused about it, be strategic about it. And the way that you can do that is to focus on quality over quantity. So if I have a choice to make, and this pretty much applies across the board in my life now. It was a lot harder when I was younger and I didn't have any money. It was harder to make the quality choice because sometimes quality costs more. But now that you've had some years of experience and you've earned a couple of dollars, you can appreciate that quality things are so much better than quantity. There's if you have a tool that you need to use for your business, you buy the best tool that you can afford. Whether it be a computer or a wrench or a knife, I don't care what it is. You buy the best that you can get. So I've applied the same philosophy to networking. You know, you find the best people that you can get. And it's not a numbers game. It's not, hey, I have 1 million connections. It's, I've got 100 connections that are awesome and they love me and they care about my success. I love them. I want to help them be successful and we can help each other out. So the reason that I have this picture in here, this guy is a guy named Dr. Robin Dunbar. Some of you may or may not have heard of him. He's a British anthropologist and he works at Oxford University. But he has spent his entire career studying group sizes. And Dunbar's number, if you're not familiar with it, is it's a cognitive limit on how many relationships one person can maintain. And the way that he defines a relationship is a person that you could show up at a bar unannounced and have a beer with, and it wouldn't be weird. So it's not necessarily the number of people that you know by name or the number of people that you have interactions with. It's the people that you have some relationship with, and there's varying degrees of those relationships. But the number that he's come up with is 148. So 148 is the cognitive limit for number of connections, and it's rounded up to 150. So Dunbar's number is 150. That's what you'll see all over. And there's a lot of anecdotal evidence to back it up. So ancient Roman military companies were 150. Modern day military companies are 150. Gore-Tex manufacturing facilities has actually set a limit of 150 people at their manufacturing facilities. And so they'll only make 150 parking spaces. And when they're getting close to that, they'll start to build a second facility and they'll split 75-75 and build those manufacturing facilities up to the 150 number. And then the other thing is the average person's Christmas card list is 154. And the extra 4 people are from, the couple of folks that send you a card that you weren't planning on sending a card, but now you feel obligated to send them one back because they sent you one, Anyway, so 154 is the average person's Christmas card list. Anyway, why does this matter? Why is it important for networking, strategic planning, thinking about all this stuff? So within that 150, there's actually 4 different tiers. And what we're looking at right now is the breakout of those 150 people. So the core of your network, the 4 or 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with, and the reason it's 4 or 5 is because your significant other takes up a spot. So if you aren't attached to someone, you get an extra spot in your inner circle there. So it's 4 or 5 people. They take 50% of your time. That is a massive amount of time. And then the next layer out, another 15, they take up another 25% of your time. So that core 20 people takes 75% of your time. And if you think about how much time you're actually left with in the week, it's not a lot. So, you think there's 168 hours in the week. You've got to eat, you've got to sleep, you've got to do your actual job, you got to work out, you got to hang out with, your dog or your cat, family, all that stuff. So there's a lot of things that take up time in your schedule. And then you've got a finite amount of time left over to build relationships and to work on these things. So it's really, really important. And I hope that this illustrates it a little bit, how important your time is and how judicious you need to be with who you choose to spend that time with. So anyway, the last 2 tiers there, 30% or 30 people get another 15% of your time and 100 people get 10% of your time. So I really try and focus on that core 20 people and then a little bit into the 30 people. But a great exercise, and we're not going to have time to do it, together today, but make yourself get a sheet of paper and make yourself a list and write down all the people that you have interactions with, and go back in your calendar like a year, maybe 18 months, and see who you've connected with, whether it be in person or digital. Obviously, everything now is pretty much in online over Zoom or WebEx or Google Meet or whatever it is. But keep a list and see who you've connected with and how much time you've spent with them and how you would rank them. Are they in your core? Are they in that next, tier of 15 people? It's a really challenging exercise. And I sat down and did it a couple of years ago. And it took me like a solid few hours over the course of a couple of days because I need to leave it and think about it for a while and then come back and kind of, move things around in the list. So anyway, it's a fascinating exercise to do that I would encourage everybody to do. And then the last thing that we want to talk about when we're talking about planning your network out is focusing on strategic centers of influence. So this ties in with the last slide, because that core group of people that you are talking with and want to spend the most amount of time with, so your core group of 20, let's say, those should be really, really high value strategic partners for you. For growing your business, for growing your sales career, for getting into different opportunities within your organization. If some of you have a job and you're looking to grow within the company, or to maybe make a jump to a different division or something like that, you need to be networking with people inside your organization. So you need to be cognizant of who those strategic partners are and put those people, make a concerted effort to put those people in your inner circle and spend more time with them. So how do you figure out who those people are? Put yourself in the center, and then think about who's your end client, who's the end game. And for business owners, salespeople, it's an easy thing. You build out a client persona. So who are you trying to sell to? You're probably going to have a couple different client personas, but who's your ideal customer? And be really specific about who your ideal customer is. And again, this is a tough exercise. It takes time. You got to go through many iterations of this to figure out who it is that you serve best and who it is that you're going to grow your business with. So once you figure out that ideal client, and if you're working in an organization, figure out what's the end game. Where do I want to go? Do I want to be CEO? Do I want to be head of this division? Do I want to be moved over to a new division of our company? What's that end game? And then figure out who does business with and who's interacting with the people that you need to talk to. So your referral partners, and there's a million names for these things. So strategic centers of influence, COIs, referral partners, power partners. Doesn't really matter what you call them. The point is that they're the people that you share clients and users in common with. So they do something different than you. And I'll give you an example from a business perspective. Let's say that you own a digital marketing company and your client is small businesses that are $1 to $3 million in revenue, and they're in growth mode and they're trying to expand, and they're really growing fast. So that's your ideal client. Obviously, we'd probably flush that out a little bit more and have some more data to add to that. But just for simplicity's sake, you're selling to people that are in Colorado, doing between $1 million and $3 million in revenue, and on a growth trajectory. So, and you offer digital marketing services. So who also sells to that client, but sells something different? And that would be, a CPA, or maybe a web hosting service, or managed service provider, somebody that does IT services, somebody that does the actual hardware, that's selling them computers, somebody that does software, that's either developing software or selling software out of the box. Could be somebody that's selling Salesforce, or we've got a local company here, Contact Mapping, which I'll give a shout out to in a little bit as well. So people that are doing software services, those are all people that are talking to your client and offering a different complementary service that you don't offer. So the reason that that's important is because you guys share clients in common. Everybody that you're doing business with, all of your client list could potentially be a good client for those other people. And everybody that they're doing business with could potentially be a good client for you. And if you build a relationship with that other service provider, you guys can get to a point where you're comfortable sharing business back and forth. So, and again, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to make that happen right now. So how do you connect with these people? Now that you've got a plan in place, and you've kind of got the 30,000 foot view, and you know where you're going, and you've got your people identified, you've got partners identified, you've got the whole thing laid out. How do you connect with them? And it's a little bit different now than it was, 6 months ago. So, before you could go to a networking event, or, you could go to a chamber thing, or you could go to some industry association or a conference. Now you've got to be hitting people up, digitally, online, whatever means we have for that. So these are listed in order of the order that I think you should go after them. So first and foremost is your own warm network. And I think a lot of us, me included, I mean, I have people in my own warm net, and this is what I do for a living. There's people in my warm network, people that I know and I have contact with that are maybe family members or friends of mine that I haven't really tapped for a business conversation. There's a lot of my aunts and uncles and, cousins that have businesses that are professionals that are doing really cool things. And all we talk about is family drama and, hunting or, fishing or camping or, whatever the normal conversation that you have is. And you never go into that next tier where you're talking about business and work stuff. And maybe it's because, you didn't want to waste the time on, talking about business, or maybe you didn't see how that could benefit you or benefit them, and it just seemed like a waste of time. Whatever the reason was that you didn't have that conversation, I promise you that all of you have people in your network that you could talk to right now and reach out to, and they would take your call in a heartbeat because you're friends or family, and they have things to offer in the way of business. So that is where I would start. And honestly, right now, I mean, people have been stuck at home since the middle of March. People are looking for ways to connect and to talk about something else, versus court TV or whatever garbage is on TV, and thinking about their own business. I mean, people are really interested in connecting, and I've actually had some really good success reaching out to my own family members, just doing Zoom calls, and maybe do a Zoom game night or Zoom happy hour, WebEx, Google Meet, whatever. So the first place that I would always start is your warm network. The second thing, once you've gone through, and by the way, you might not be connected with these people on social media or on LinkedIn or whatever. So it's okay to email them. It's okay to call them. And I promise you, nobody's going to be offended that you're calling to talk to them about business. A lot of times we kind of have this head trash that we build up, and we keep our, we get in our own way. We say, oh, my uncle isn't going to want to talk to me about, business. He's retired, or he, doesn't care, doesn't want to talk, blah, blah, blah. You come up with these stories, and I promise you, just reach out. And if somebody says no to you, that's okay. They're not going to be mad at you for asking. And, a lot of times a no is a good thing to get. So, all right. The next thing is a personal intro from a friend. So those people that that are in your network, that you have been keeping contact with, that you've got some sort of relationship with, you can ask those people to introduce you to another person that could, be a good strategic partner. So we're not going to talk a ton about the mechanics of it, but I'll touch on it a little bit later. But using LinkedIn to ask for introductions and to find people and to figure out how you're connected to that person, that's a great tool, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But asking your friends to make introductions for you to strategic partners is great. Anybody that you have a common connection with. And the ask is super easy. And by the way, this is something that I didn't explicitly put in the slide deck, but I think it's so important. With any of this stuff, I think people really want to help each other out. That's just a base level belief that I have. I want to help you, you want to help me, and that's just how things work. If somebody, actually this morning, this is a great random story. This morning, we have landscaping folks for our HOA that come around and cut the grass and everything. And one of the dudes came up to me. I was coming in from a run, and he actually stopped me. And I thought something was wrong. He had to talk to me about some expensive repair and the sprinkler system or something like that. But he actually just needed a wrench. His edger had busted on him, and he needed a wrench. And he was like, hey, do you have a wrench that I can, borrow for the day? Because this is probably going to happen again. And I'm like, absolutely, no problem. I ran inside, got a wrench, gave it to him. I was happy to help. There was, no skin off my back to do that. And it really, helped him out of a jam. So that was such a simple example of how, somebody just asked for help. I was able to provide it. And I honestly 100% believe that if you ask other people for their help in business, that they are more than willing to provide it but you have to make it easy for them. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, about how to make it easy for them and take all the objections that they're going to have off the table. The third tier, I guess, of how to connect with people is you share connections in common. So you don't necessarily know the person that you're trying to connect with. You don't really know the person that you're connected, with, that you share in common. But it's easy to send a message, and I get these all the time, where it's like, "Hey, Phil, I noticed that we have, 4 connections in common. Morgan and Robert and Kevin and Randy are all connections, and we should connect because we have those connections in common." Usually I respond with a couple of questions, but that's an easy way to sort of warm up what would normally be a cold call or a cold email outreach or cold LinkedIn outreach. So saying that you have some connections in common and writing some verbiage around that ask. So and then the last thing is cold outreach via LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, email and phone. All of these things in a digital world right now, people are in front of their computers. They're in front of their phones. They're on their phones all the time. They're on their computer. They're looking at stuff. They're, surfing the internet. They're checking their email. It's so easy to grab people's attention now. Well, I take that back. It's not easy to grab their attention, but they're there. It's in, you can get in front of them fairly easy. You have to still, make an effort to, present it in the right way. But right now, nobody's going out to in-person meetings, and half the people aren't even going to their office anymore. So, there's not a lot of commuting. There's not a lot of other stuff going on. So people are just sitting at home, turning their computer on and going through their emails, and they're constantly there. So LinkedIn is my favorite for business, and depends on what your business is. I know there's a lot of people that do business and their prospects are on Facebook and Instagram and that kind of stuff. For me and what I do, I'm business to business. All of my clients are on LinkedIn. Some of them are on Facebook, but for the most part, Facebook is more of a social thing than LinkedIn. So reaching out to people on LinkedIn cold, you've got to use some finesse there. And it's not really something that I personally do for my business, but I know it has been super effective for other folks in our organization even. So for instance, if you reach out to somebody and you say, "Hey, here's an offering that I have. I know we're not connected." I always like being upfront with that. I know we're not connected. I know there's, this is kind of a cold outreach, but here's the reason that I thought we should connect. Here's why I wanted to connect with you. I think that, we could have a couple of good conversations about this. And if it's a no, then cool, no problem. You can do the same thing on Facebook, and obviously email and phone. I know people aren't a huge fan of, cold calling and cold emailing, but if done properly, it can be effective. It's not efficient, and there's definitely better ways to approach things. But I cut my teeth telemarketing when I was in high school, and if anything, it is predictable. So I knew that if I made 100 phone calls, I'd get 1 sale, and I'd get hung up on a lot. And if you're okay with that, then just do the math. If you get 1 sale from 100 calls and you need to make 100 sales, then, settle in, because you're going to be on the phone for a while. But anyway, all right. So how to nurture those relationships. Once you've reached out and made the initial contact with people and you've started that relationship, how do you continue it, and how do you nurture it, and how do you get it to a point where you can eventually leverage it and ask those people for help? This is a long-term play. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. Building your network, whether it's in person or digitally, doesn't really matter. It's a long-term thing that you have to commit to. So it's like any relationship. Whether it be a business relationship or a romantic relationship, you've got to be committed to it for the long term. You don't enter a marriage and say, oh, I'm gonna get married and then I can just phone it in after that, and it's going to be great. It's really not going to be great. And I'm just on the front end of it. I've been married for 5 years now, so I still know nothing. But the first thing in building relationships is to be interested versus interesting. And I think that's such a huge distinction to make. There's a quote, I can't remember who said it, but nobody knows nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. It's a little cliche, but it's true. People want to know that you are interested in them and that you care about them and that you are going to take care of them, that they're going to, you have their best interest at heart. And the way that you do that is by listening, by taking an interest in things that they are interested in. And one of my first sales managers said it the best, and I've always remembered it. He said, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them proportionately. So that can be challenging, especially for people like myself. I love to talk, and I know a lot of other people that are in sales or that start a business. They also are in that boat where they love to talk. And if you have cool things that you've done and you want to talk about them, it's hard to shut up. But it is one of the most important things that you can do. One of the best skills that you can develop is to learn how to ask questions and then shut up. That's it. Just ask questions. And you know what? It's so much easier too. You don't have to think about what you're going to say. You don't have to think about, entertaining somebody or like going on and telling a great story. All you have to do is come up with a couple of really great questions and ask the person about themselves and then listen. And they're going to leave that conversation and they're going to say, that was the best conversation I've ever had, because they got to talk about themselves for however long you let them talk. And people love that. So anyway, be interested versus interesting. Getting to know your partners. It's part of it. It's all of this kind of builds on itself and it keeps, it's all integrated. So you really need to get to know people on a different level. There's a business level, and then there's the personal level, and there's probably even a deeper personal level that you can go to. And when you think about, what kind of stuff you're gonna talk about, what you're gonna ask them, it doesn't really matter. You want it to flow naturally. You want the conversation to flow naturally. You don't want to be talking about business and then all of a sudden be like, hey, so how are your kids? How's the vacation? It's got to flow together. But you want to take an interest in people outside of their business interests. So, whether it be a strategic partner that you have or a client, figure out what their goals are, what their dreams are, what makes them tick, what kind of causes are they interested in, what kind of charities do they support, what do they do on the weekends, where do they vacation? And you're doing that. It can't be a move. You can't do it because I told you to do it. And so now you're like, okay, I got to check the box. I got to ask about the family. I got to ask about the vacation. That's not why you're doing it. You got to actually be interested in people, going back to the first point. And you actually have to care and take an interest. And if you're not the type of person that really cares about other people, this is, it'll be a challenging thing for you to do. Anyway, but I really think people actually do care about other people, and they want to learn about other people. So, but ask them questions, get to know your partners on a different level, and pay attention to the details, because people will say all sorts of things in a conversation that you could easily just brush under the rug, in one ear and out the other. You don't think about it ever again. And it was really valuable information. Maybe they tell you their kids' names, or they tell you their pets' names, or they tell you where they have a cabin, or they tell you, where their parents live, or where they're from, or what college they went to, or a fraternity that they were involved with, or a charity that they're on the board of, or, whatever that little tidbit of information is. You've got to have a keen ear and be able to say, that's an important thing. I'm going to take a note of that and keep it in my file on this client, because later on down the road, it could come in handy for building a relationship. And I think one of the biggest things for building a relationship with your clients is just remembering those things and asking them on the next call, hey, how was your vacation? I know you said you were going back to Rochester, New York to visit your mom. How'd that go? And the simple act of asking that question tells them that you were paying attention to the conversation. It tells them that you cared enough to remember it, and that you cared enough to bring it back up and ask them about it. So it's a really simple thing mechanically, like the act of doing it is simple, but it goes so far with building a relationship with people. So and these are things that you don't have to do in person. All of this stuff can be done online and over Zoom and Google Meet and over the phone or FaceTime, whatever it is that you like to use. So the last thing on how to nurture relationships is just staying top of mind, making sure that you're in front of people on a regular basis. So it's so important because of how adults learn. And we forget most of the information that we hear almost immediately. So everything that we talk about in this presentation, you're going to forget 50% of it by this time tomorrow, maybe even sooner. And then the next day, you're going to forget another 50%, and the next day, another 50. So if I am interested in building a relationship with you, and I want to make sure that you remember me, you remember Firestorm, you remember what we talked about, I've got to constantly be staying in front of you. I've got to post something on LinkedIn, and I got to say, hey, great to have everybody on that presentation that I did for Longmont Startup Week. Tag everybody and say, really looking forward to continuing the conversation. And then you're going to see that and you're going to be like, oh, that's right. We did talk about that, LinkedIn stuff and building relationships and strategic planning and yada, yada, yada. So you've got to stay in front of people, and doing that digitally is actually somewhat easier than doing it in person. So, you can post things on LinkedIn, you can post things on Facebook and Instagram, and, wherever it is that you're putting content out on social media. It's also really easy to just call people, and it's also easy to, email people and to text them and to, send them little stuff in the mail. So I was really happy to hear Robert give a little shout out in the last presentation about my penchant for handwritten thank you cards. And I think it's such an easy thing, and nobody does it anymore. I mean, I can't tell you how many interactions I've had with people over the last, say 5 years, and how many people send thank you cards and follow-up cards. It's almost not a measurable percentage. I think I've probably had, 5,000 interactions with people, and maybe I've gotten maybe 10 cards, maybe. I'd say that's a stretch. So sending something to people in the mail is super easy. It's super nice, and people think so highly of it. And especially now, like I go to get the mail, and it's like, it's like a daily adventure, right? I get to leave my house, and got to get, a block of walking in. My watch will be like, hey, you cleared your move bar, and I'm like, yes. So anyway, I go to the mailbox, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking for. I know it's just gonna be a bunch of junk mail and political garbage. So if I see something in there that's actually addressed to me and came from somebody that I might know, I'm really excited about it. So I think nowadays is a great time to be sending handwritten letters and thank you notes, and just, hey, I'm thinking about you. Or if you, get out of the house and you get to go to the mountains, go buy a postcard in Leadville or something, and like send it to somebody and be like, hey, I was up in Leadville, thought of you, hope all is well. That's it. That's all you need to do. And you'll stay top of mind with that person for a long time. So, excuse me. Okay. The last thing, sorry, I said the last thing was the last thing. It wasn't. Providing value. So we want to provide value for our network, and we want to give before we receive, and you want to make deposits in this relational bank account. And that can take a lot of different forms. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. It can be anything. It could be buying something from your partner. Say I have a thing with stickers. I really like, I've been buying like Firestorm swag and stuff like that. So, but the person that I buy things from, they're little orders, but it keeps us interacting with each other, keeps us top of mind. And I'm making little deposits into this relational bank account. I can make introductions for people. I'm always, it's my business, but I think everybody should be, adding this into their practice, making sure that you are going out of your way to look for introductions for other people. How can I connect to other business people that is not going to benefit me in any way, but they're going to get some value out of it. I'm going to say this person, my friend Mike, he needs something, and I'm able to introduce him to a person that can provide that, and I'm going to get some great joy and benefit out of making that introduction. So I'm making little deposits in that relational bank account. It's also a way to stay top of mind, and it goes a long way. So, and not that you should never do anything with the expectation of receiving things in return. It's not a quid pro quo kind of transaction. You should always give with the idea that it's never going to come back to you. But the interesting thing about that is that it always does. And, part of building a network and providing value and receiving value from that network is kind of that flow of business and that flow of transactions and introductions. And I think that's super important to keep in mind. So, and then going back to one thing on staying top of mind, there's a good way to stay top of mind and a bad way to stay top of mind. You don't want to just add somebody to, a email list and just spam them, constantly be sending out information on, hey, here's my company and here's why I'm so awesome. And this is the specials that we have going on these days. If they opt into that, that's fine. But when you think about staying top of mind with somebody and in the context of nurturing a relationship with them, you want to have interactions and send them things that don't have anything to do with business. If I know somebody is, say, I'm from Minnesota, say somebody, I found out that they're a Golden Gophers fan. Anytime something about the Gophers pops up in the news, I'm going to send them a message and be like, hey, not sure if you saw this, probably already did because you're a big fan, but check this out. This happened about the team. Football is going to happen, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. You've got to have these interactions with people that don't have anything to do with business, but you're still in front of them. You still think about, they still think about you when they see whatever it is that you're sending them. And those messages could be texts or calls or emails or LinkedIn messages or posts or whatever that is. But anyway, it can't all be about business. It's got to be stuff that they're interested in and that you think is going to provide value for them. So, all right, the last thing here that we're going to talk about is tracking and measuring. So, tracking and measuring is so important, and it's come so far since I started in my sales career. So I used to have a recipe box, which I actually still have, with 3x5 cards, and I would write all the clients' names and all the notes that we were talking about on the card. So this first thing here, this is actually something I borrowed from Harvey McKay, and he wrote the McKay 66. It's actually in one of his books. It's in the How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. And the McKay 66 is basically a document that has 66 things that he thought that you should know about a client or a partner that you're doing business with. And it's really granular stuff. It's got first name, middle name, last name, spouses' names, kids' names, pets' names, height, weight, like where they went to college, for sorority or fraternity, boards that they sit. I mean, it's very detailed. And it's a couple of pages long, and he actually would fill it out and put it in his file. So it's not something that you sit down and you interview somebody and you say, so tell me, what are your kids' names and your wife's name, and when did you guys get married? What's your anniversary? That's not the way that you use it. It's going back to one of the other previous points I made. You've got to pay attention to detail. People will give you all this information over the course of time in multiple conversations, and you've got to be listening for it, and you've got to take a note of it, and you got to keep it in your records. So that's the McKay 66. If anybody's interested in getting it, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'm happy to send you the PDF. But the other thing that I like to do is keep notes in LinkedIn messages. So I did a presentation earlier this morning for a bunch of First Bank interns. and I've already gotten a couple of messages from them, and I told them to do this, so I'm glad they were listening. But they put in the connection request. Hey, Phil, great to meet you at the First Bank intern presentation on LinkedIn that you gave. I look forward to staying connected. So what that does is it keeps it in my notes in the LinkedIn messages, and then I can see the day that we connected, and that'll be a cue to me how we connected with that person. And I use that all the time as well. So when I connect with somebody on LinkedIn, I send them that note, and then I make sure that, I've got a note for myself, because not everybody does that. CRMs, I mentioned I was going to give a shout out to Contact Mapping, local Longmont company. Get a CRM. There's a million of them out there, but it's a great way to keep these things in order, keep notes, and make sure that you've got a place to set reminders and things and keep notes and that kind of stuff. So that is pretty much it. So questions, comments, concerns? What are you doing on time?
Bill, you're doing great. We got a couple minutes for a couple questions, and I saw one. There's a user today, in case the uninitiated, called Batphone, and I'm in love with that username, so I get to make the da every time they ask a question. Classic 60s Batman coming in here. Anyways, they said that sales is one of the hardest skills to teach and to do well. I see a lot of entrepreneurs with great ideas that may have great products with big potential. Unfortunately, they say 90% of them cannot sell and go out and get their first 100 customers, and most don't have a budget either. What advice do you have for them?
Okay, so I need a little clarification on that last part of the question there. So they can't sell, but they go out and get 100 customers?
Oh, no, they can't sell and get their first 100 customers. Like they're unable to get their first 100 customers because they can't sell.
Right. And they don't have budget to hire somebody to do it for.
Yeah, a lot don't.
Right, exactly. Okay, yeah, we're all wearing multiple hats here. Salesperson, CEO, marketer, blah, blah. So sales is really, it's gotten a bad rap. And the thing is that you don't think of yourself as a salesperson. I think that's one of the things that trips people up is they're like, I'm not a salesperson. I hate selling. And that's a normal thing. But if you tell a story, and you started your business for a reason, and like he said, you've got a great idea, you've got a great product, you've got a great service, whatever it is that you're passionate about. Otherwise, you wouldn't have started a business unless you're just a glutton for punishment. But you've got something that you're super passionate about. You need to go out and tell that story. And yeah, you're going to screw it up a bunch of times. That's okay. But just keep trying. Like you've got to, keep getting up to bat and figuring out your messaging and, seeing how things land with people. And if they don't like what you said that time, change it and then go try it a different way the next time. But you just got to keep going and make sure that you're, tweaking and learning on the fly and, kind of doing a check-in with yourself. Like, how did that go? But, sales is a challenging thing, but I think all of us are always going to be in sales forever, no matter what we want. So yeah, make peace with it.
That's awesome. All right. I think last question, because we're close to time. So Jason on Facebook asks, you hit on some great LinkedIn advice. I currently just use it as a de facto business version of Facebook and haven't had much success with making contacts that result in leads. In addition to what you said, is it worth getting the $30 monthly membership?
Okay, so short answer, no, I don't think it's worth getting the $30 monthly membership. I used to pay for Sales Navigator, didn't really find much of an increase in value in it. And so I actually have had a free account for years and years and years. But you've got to understand what the goal is with reaching out to that person. And, going back to one of the slides I had with figuring out your strategic partners and those centers of influence, if you can say, hey, we are both serving the same client. And instead of using it as a prospecting tool and figuring out how do I find clients, if you can reach out to strategic partners and say, hey, we both are serving the same market. We're both selling into businesses that are, doing $1 to $3 million in revenue. I've got a service that you don't offer. Let's talk and see how we can collaborate and maybe, help each other out. I think you'll get a lot better of a response there. because you're coming at it from equal footing and you're offering some value and not just trying to sell somebody something. So I like that approach. And then, sometimes it does actually turn into leads for business. But anyway.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Phil, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you. And we'll be back in a few minutes with our last session of today about disrupting hard industry tech. So thank you again, Phil, and have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks.
See ya.